Well, my name is Min. I am working as a concept artist and been working as a concept artist in the entertainment industry for film, games, TV shows, things like that for 7 years now. Um, I guess I started as a very 2D uh, artist, and I was actually I had a architecture background. Switched to entertainment industry, starting first in video games in the studio like Crytek, and then my recent work was in films and TV shows. My recent stuff I did was some environment concept art for Snowpiercer TV series, Lost in Space, and um, many different shows. I can probably share my screen. So maybe I actually I was doing architecture. I grew up in Ukraine, in a small town Odessa. But obviously my parents are Vietnamese, but it's just I grew up in Ukraine, and I was really passionate about architecture. But got a reality sort of hit me when I realized that uh, I wanted to travel as well, and just being an architect, it's a very local, profession, because your whole clientele, your license, and all these things are bounded to the location that you live. And then also, I imagine like architecture is something that you graduate, and then all of a sudden you'll be building mega structures and you know supermarkets, or like big things or things like that. They're fun, and the reality was I was mostly getting the interior jobs, and maybe with time it would get better, but then like it seemed like a very not something that I would like to pursue like as a career for my whole life. And then I think I saw like Minority Report, and I realized that with the old sci-fi cities, it's like some people actually did it, and those people actually probably have architecture background. So uh, if they can do it, maybe I can do it as well. So I started to look into that, did a quick crash course for 1 year in Singapore, and then, you know, and then try to switch career to and build my portfolio towards entertainment industry. And, so by, and, because I think also I was playing Mass Effect back then, and I also fell in love with the whole architecture and sci-fi cities and all this spaceships and all that stuff. So, um, yeah, it's been a journey for 7 years, and I've been to Singapore. I did some freelancing, and also right now I'm based in Vancouver, Canada. Um, yeah, so this is if you can see my screen.
Yeah, yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, so this is me. Um, you know, uh, to explain to average audience, not like for those who are sorry, what am I saying? Just to explain to people who are not familiar with concept art is our job as a concept artist is to visually communicate and solve uh, visual problems. Say you have a film industry, right? You have a creative director, you have art director, and you prob have like a script, and writers, and it's like a director wants to see a keyframe or a design for, say, Min, I want like uh, can you design me a robot in a hangar, for example, right? So how that's gonna look like. So this is where concept artists come in, and we try to solve different problems by designing things, or doing some inspirational pieces and all that stuff. Um, and what I like about my profession is that tools really, you're not very bounded to limited by any tools. So it's just uh, the image is just the way we communicate, and how you get there, it doesn't really matter as long as it solves the problem. So um, for example, this is I don't know if it's might be a spoiler, like for Snowpiercer. My first job in a VFX studio was uh, frozen Vancouver, and it was funny because me and my wife just arrived to Vancouver, and 2 weeks later, I'm getting this first assignment. My first task was to destroy Vancouver, and yeah, so this is some of the story is like, for example, a very dead city with a main hero being a train, like, um, you know.
What was the brief? Was that the brief, like a dense city, dead city with a train, or?
Oh no, of course not. I just like now that I'm sharing, I'm thinking maybe I'm gonna spoil it or something to show. Let me cover something that is a little bit more safe. Um,
Okay. We don't want to get you in trouble.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's just I've been doing it for so long, and it's just like different genres, different stories, different films, and if uh, if I would show you that um, these are some of the shows that I worked on, and it's just so many of them, um, that sometimes you need to find your own voice as an artist, and I'm still you know searching for my personal IP, something that I would like to develop more and refine more. So this is where the journey. So like, for example, what you see here is my work with uh, VR and Gravity Sketch in particular. Um, so I started experimenting with Gravity Sketch, and this is probably one of the earliest things that I did in VR. And what's cool, how I picked it up is basically I was taking Jamadra Vibes course mentorship uh, in October last year, 2019, right? And he told me he encouraged me to pick up VR and the Gravity Sketch in particular, because for the stuff that I wanted to build, he said that this is the way. It's and I trusted his instinct, and uh, instantly fell in love with Gravity Sketch because of how simple it is. I mean, I use I used to use a bunch of 3D packages like 3ds Max, Moto, and recently I picked up Blender. Um, ZBrush, I tried to learn it, but it's just so difficult to me. And I'm very into UI and very clean, simple UIs, and this is what really resonated with me. That the Gravity Sketch is just so simple that I think even a baby can just pick it up and just build something. Um, so that's a very interesting um, um, sort of approach, because it's like a piano, right? It's just limited. It has only like 80 something keys, but the musician or the artist is creativity is infinite. So what you can build with it is just, it's up to you. The sky's the limit. Uh, this is the stuff that I did for the Gravity Sketch competition. So I really tried to like to build everything in VR because I thought that was the brief. So yeah, it took a minute to build this, but it was a very fun experience. And I the thing about the VR is that it's probably what makes it so different to other 3D packages is that there's no way I think I would have patience and energy to do this in traditional 3D, because moving a mouse cursor it's just not as fun as, like sculpting things in by hand, you know. Um, and I think that's what I like about Gravity Sketch too. It's just the fun factor to it. For me, I just treat it as play. Um, and of course, it takes time for, especially for ambitious projects like this. But eventually, it pays off, I think, because um, you get some fun things like this. I will also
How
for
long
this
did
one,
how long did the boat take?
the boat took me maybe 2 days, 2 days to assemble it or something like that. But which is still very fast compared to, like, you know, um, because all the ropes, all the things, you just create a kit on the side, and then you just drag it and duplicate it. The grabbing tool in Gravity Sketch, I think that's what makes it so powerful, is that you just kit bash things. You can either import objects that you pre-made from other software into Gravity Sketch and then kit bash that, or you can pre-make, like, primitive shapes or like something, and then just put it where it is. And then symmetry makes it so appealing, right? Because it adds like structure. And people, I can go really deep with the design philosophy of this stuff, but
That's good.
symmetry by default makes something really appealing. It's like, for example, this thing. The idea was initially um, I, to make a structure that is inspired by the symbolism. So all the um, all the golden rule symbols, kind of like elegantly unified and make a something fantastical. And I did all this in Gravity Sketch. It was just like, just like making brush strokes here and there. That was really fun experience. I can play a video maybe.
And how long was this process? This is really interesting.
This is not long, maybe like day and a half just to do this. I actually spend less time in VR than in Blender, the 3D package where I work on my presentation, texturing, all that stuff. I spend more time presenting the work than actually building the work. So that's what, to give you in perspective, right? Like, it took me more time, for example, to render or to texture the ship or this guy. Maybe I'd say for sculpting, I usually would spend maybe a day and a half, and then I can literally spend like 2-3 days texturing and rendering this whole thing and finding the right composition and camera. And I can go really, like, into it because it's a personal work, so there's no sort of deadline for me. I just do it for myself.
What's your texturing pipeline?
It's very simple. It depends. But for this, it's very simple, right? Because it's just like plasticky resin um, texture. But I usually keep things very simple. But yeah, it's a good question though, because I wanted to also mention that for me, okay, if you break the pipeline for me, right? The core thing, like at the top of a pyramid, I would say it would be a story or idea. I usually like try to think about the ideas and try to like visually like imagine my final image or like what I want trying to say, um, by finding references, like reading a bunch of material. So that's the idea. And then secondly, um, I think about how to build it, or what would be the most efficient approach for this thing. you know. So for example, the robot, right? um, I knew I wanted to build a robot that is in some sort of interior, right? And in a very early stage, I usually think about my presentation. What would be better to build in Gravity Sketch, and what would be better to build in the, Blender. So I know for sure that this would be much more fun to do in VR, like my subject, because it's so organic and and I just find the design process is a little bit easier for me in VR, because you can experiment, you can like drag stuff and like scale it up, and it's just like, because it's so out tactile wouldn't be the right word for something that is so digital, but it's just, I feel like it's so hands-on, because it's like you just use the controllers and all this stuff. But for the rest of the stuff, which is very man-made, and we know how the hangar looked like, and for all this like very hard surface things, I think it's easier for me to at least to do in Blender. um, so I think about that for sure. And then
What I find interesting is that you you've never been able to work in this way, I guess, in VR, like immersively. So how were you able to pick it up, and what gave you confidence? Because this is kind of a big jump from the work you were doing before Gravity Sketch to what you're doing now. Like, it seems to be like it would be a bit of a challenge, right? To like switch the way that you're normally used to working in 3D. I know that you're working with different tools now and you're trying to bring different tools
mm,
together, but like, what can you talk us through that process of like jumping from like
yeah,
word of mouse to VR?
sure. um, it's again, I guess it's like has to do with the fun factor, really. I don't know what it's like, is it a psychological law or like a physical law or something like that, but then I feel like uh, there is a resistance to any piece. Sometimes when you choose like, do I need to really work on the personal piece, or I'd rather watch Netflix or do something else. But then because this VR and Gravity Sketch thing is so fun, you know, I'm willing to spend time and put my energy to it. But then it comes at the limit, obviously. If it was like, if say you guys didn't have a launchpad, to explain, launchpad is like, it's like a Google Drive for Gravity Sketch, the way I see it. And what's fun about it is that, like, first of all, a lot of people have a misconception that in order to use VR you need a powerful computer in order to actually properly work and do things like this, right? But actually no, all this stuff I actually built in Quest, so I didn't even plug my VR into computer. And then once I finish so once I'm done with the model in VR, I just upload it into Launchpad and then download it to my computer from as an OBJ object. um, One thing I need to mention, though, well, sorry, come back to your question, because I can
No, that's good. That's good.
digress.
Yeah,
I can digress. Yeah, yeah. So the transition is, um, make sure that uh, make sure that the idea that you want to do or story is striking enough, and you're actually passionate about it. It's easy to just you know slack and do something else, but this is just the stuff because I wanted to do, and I just find I'm just passionate about it, and I don't know how else I would explain it. Um, but again, also I've been doing it for quite a while as well, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
One,
so
one thing that Jamma often says, so Jamma comes to the office, well, before the lockdown, he would come like every 2 weeks, one time.
yeah,
And this one thing he said to me when I first met him was that he's always looking for ways to just like do something really quick, like almost like he's cheating.
yeah,
And it's funny coming from him because he's so natural. He's built up all the skills to use the tool, and so I
yeah,
think sometimes people coming into the space will think, "Oh, the tool is what made him cheat and be so fast." But it's actually when I talked to him about this, and I actually started to watch some of his tutorials. It's like you have to have the fundamentals. If you don't have the fundamentals, it's impossible. It
yes.
no matter what the tool is.
That's true. And there is actually it's really great that you mentioned it about the fundamentals. And I recently watched this really awesome video from Flip Normals guys. It's like they have a YouTube. I highly recommend watching them. Flip Normals. So they uh, we're talking about difference between fundamentals and basics. And fundamentals is something that you um, it's like hard to achieve, but then you always learn the fundamentals. What goes to the fundamentals? It's more like a sense of composition, a good taste, you know, understanding of lighting and colors and all that stuff. And basics, it's like how well do you know the tools? You know, like you can have a really good basics of 3D Max or like Blender. You can model stuff really well, and you know all the technical things, you know, so you have like really good basics. But if you have terrible sense of composition or fundamentals, right, it's like usually doesn't really look good. So Jama has amazing fundamentals. It's like he can probably do, you know, anything and make it look awesome. So it's not really cheating, it's just um and I really agree with Jama, you know, and I all for like learning, and it's like it's never late to learn anything new, really. Especially it's in our industry, it's so easy to get stagnant, you know, you just know one thing and it's like it's so easy to become a dinosaur because tools are changing, right? And imagine sort of like being a chef, right? And you only know how to use like one particular knife or only use one pan to cook your meal, right? And then something new comes up, and it's a knife is a lot sharper. Or no, it's probably not a good comparison. It's more like Formula One, right? If you think about it, Formula One, it's all about like competition of technology, and whoever have a better tech, right? It's like whoever have a better know-how how to do a more efficient an engine or things like that. So it's more like that, and it actually opens up so many interesting creative ways to solve the problem. I find a lot of people who just you know, for example, there has been a wave of Blender users, and I find it's funny because like a lot of people started to have a very similar-ish works because of what that tool can do, you know. And but like like introducing VR in my personal life, right? It's just opens up like wow, I never thought I would, you know, design things that way, because a mouse can limit you in a way that, you know, it's a certain boxy things that you can model because it's easier, you know, because everything snaps to XYZ. You know, you create a box, a default box in Blender or Maya, right? It'll just give you a perfect box in the 3D space. But in Gravity Sketch, it's like it's whatever, right? And so all of a sudden, your objects are becoming a little bit more organic and a little bit more natural, as if they have weight to it. Um, so yeah, and I can't wait for actually I saw some of the new development updates from Gravity Sketch, like really well done, a great job guys, it's really amazing.
There's
I
more to
can't wait
come.
to.
More to come. So would you say
Yeah,
it's important if you're going to move into like VR design to have the fundamentals or the basics? Which one is kind of, I mean, I can almost,
fundamentals.
I can almost guess what you're going to say. But do you think the fundamentals are even more important, I guess, when you move into this space? Because you don't get a
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah. Um, Fundamentals, think of it this way. It's more like, uh, probably not a very good, okay, good fundamentals is that it's like in visual, right? It's more like how you can speak. No, it's more like this. Fundamentals is that, like, you imagine a sentence, right? A cat is sitting on the, you know, uh, on the couch, right? So fundamentally, it's an okay sentence, right? Basics is more like you can know all the fancy words that you know, but then if the structure is not right, a cat couch sitting, or like you can say a beautiful cat, uh, red sofa. You can decorate it with any details, and you can put it any way you want. So that's your basics, right? But if the fundamentals of the sentence is not correct, it will just look a little bit off, or it will sound a bit off, isn't it? It doesn't matter what fancy word you use, you know. So I think of it this way. But it's like, because like I mentioned earlier, I usually think about my presentation from early stages. So that helps me realize what I should do in VR, or what I should build in Blender, or do I even need to build anything really? For example, let me go through my process real quick, right? This started as a very quick doodle. I mean, this guy, right? Uh, so I just need to put something in 3D space, so I don't scared of the, you know, of empty canvas. And then the video that you watched is something that I built. I'll just, it just takes a little bit of time, but
Is there a reason why you're using the one simple color, like one solid color?
no, actually, no, it's just for presentation. It's just for presentation, but I don't use, and I'll explain you in a bit. There's a trick thing that I discovered for myself. So this is just a bunch of screenshots that I did. So this whole design process is over. So usually, this is what I see in my VR. So I usually break it down by materials. So like shiny object is going to be one material, and then my core base color is going to be this. My accent is going to be like different color, and people obviously different color as well. Why I do that? Because when I bring it to Blender, uh, I'm able to separate object, because it all comes as one object, right? But I'm able to separate my object by materials, so it helps me to texture later much easier. So later on, you'll see me doing the rest of the environment in Blender, some gloss pass.
How did you set up the environment in Gravity Sketch? Because did you import something from Blender to give you context, or was that just a freehand sketch and then you just built the environment around the sketch? Like what was that process? Because how do you make these things align?
Which environment? You mean this guy?
Yeah, was that to help you align everything up when you get into Blender, or like what was that process like?
Oh no, yeah, I just did it. I just did it just for myself, so I kind of could estimate the scale, and then like a visual information. And I also like to take screenshots, right? It's like because I'm not creating a game, whereas like a gamer is gonna like see this whole thing for like in all this like 360 angles. It's just like, no, I knew that it's just gonna be like one, two, maybe a little bit of close up, And then yeah, I take screenshots. I take screenshots in Gravity Sketch, and then I say like, okay, so this composition helps. Yeah, but for Blender, actually, I barely model any of this. So it's it's like I don't even I usually bring flat textures and then I just cut it and turn it into objects. So this way I don't really need I just skip one step of texturing later or UVing all that crap, you know. And I wish I was I wish I was a little bit more well spoken. So this is my raw render from 3D, and later on I popped colors and lighting in Photoshop just to make it, you know, read better. So
Sweet.
that's about it.
And can you go back to just the ambient inclusion image? What does that image give you?
Some shadows.
Oh, okay.
You know, in Photoshop, I just you know, like if I need to, I can like pop the shadows a little bit. I barely. It turned out that I didn't need it, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's the beauty of 3D is, you know, it just gives you stuff. This is my recent work that I also did. I wanted to experiment with, you know, actually double down on the VR by creating something asymmetrical, something that, you know, would be quite a challenge to do in a traditional 3D software, I think. So again, a very rough sketch. I also bring some primitives and then sketch on top of them. Because this thing is sort of symmetrical, but it's asymmetrical, but I need to pose it. So it's like this is just my quick visual representation. As you can see, you in Gravity Sketch, you can just bring objects and kit bash, you know, however you want, and then add your own things and just have fun with it. Some screenshots, and you can go quite detailed. And this what I'm showing is obviously a screenshot from Oculus like Rift S, but I made it all in Quest, so it can go really detailed. Trying to tell a story, you know, it's like maybe two guys like helping each other to climb the leg or something like that.
You have some content here that's kit bashed, but also you have some Gravity Sketch content. It's like you mixed a bunch of 3D together.
Yeah, because again, it's I just always like JAMA. I'd always think about like what would be the most efficient way. For example, if you look at this, right? This is just a plane. I didn't have to do the thickness to it because I know in Blender there is a solidified tool, which later can give me the depth that I need. Also did this damage for the building that you will see later on here. But you see, like all this barn things that I projected the wooden texture on this brown thing. That's why I separated by color. So for people as well. And oh, this is a video. Everything looks so much easier in time lapse. Magic of editing.
I noticed that you have the axis turned on.
Yeah.
In the floor.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me, but it helps quite a lot because like I need to know, you know, because I knew that this robot's going to interact with the, you know, building. So
And you use the ground plane or the stage floor? You use this to just know
yeah,
where the base is?
yeah, I do. I guess I just use what I can use, whatever that gets the job done. Uh, you know,
And how did you come up with the idea initially? Did you just start sketching in Gravity Sketch, or did you have like a thumbnail sketch in a notebook, or like how did this concept come about?
uh, it all started with that idea. I wanted to tell a story of, since I already did the previous robot, I was like, that's an interesting world. I want to see what else I can do, you know. And I remembered I'm trying to sometimes I pull from my past, like some things that I liked, maybe some things that I'm feeling nostalgic about. For example, I really like the Iron Giant film, and I think that like that film is just, I don't know, it was really great. And I wanted to tell a story, maybe like, there is a barn and someone's living there, and then this robot fell from the sky or after the battle or something like that. And because I'm in my head, I'm planning to tell a whole story, and then about that person maybe converting this robot into a bar, because he can't really move that robot, but he can take advantage of it, and maybe he'll rebuild the full inside and convert it into like a bar, and it will be like an attraction, something like that, because lives goes on. And mm,
Oh,
so
this is a really cool concept. Yeah, it's kind of, as a concept artist, you have to also have this imagination to come up with this type of scenario at the same time, especially if you're going to do your own independent work, right?
yeah. And working in the art department for films, I remember we were doing concepts based on the script, right? So it's like we have a script, and we break the film down to like, let's make 25 key points, and to tell the story, and so the director can sort of see and get inspired by the imagery. uh, Sometimes it's for a pitch, and the showrunners decide based on the concept, does it worth doing this film or not, things like that. And oftentimes we would do a concept, and a writer or a director would discover a plot hole, like, based on the image. So we're not really writers. I'm not a writer, I'm pretty bad at it. So but it does, kind of very connected. um, I,
That's,
I want to show you this. So you see this barn? It's actually a photo texture. I didn't model it. So it's like I just brought a texture flat image, and I just like cut out the windows and extruded it a little bit and added some bump texture to it, so to make it um, look like a real uh, yeah. So all this is just like textures that I projected on top of the Gravity Sketch, and a little bit of here and there.
so you didn't have to do any post like geo work.
I did, um, but not much.
Like you
Some
thicken.
of this stuff I can paint. I did quite a lot of work in Photoshop after this, just to you know add all this dust and falling from the roof, because it's like collateral. So just to emphasize the impact from the fall from the robot, right? Obviously, it, maybe eventually I'll learn how to do all these particles in 3D, but for now it's easier for me to do it in Photoshop.
That's cool. So just like as we're kind of coming up to the end here, there's a couple of things to kind of bring forth before we close. And one is I want to ask if you were able to start finding your personal style, your personal IP, which you mentioned earlier, through the use of virtual reality and some of the newer tools that you're using, like how much closer do you think you're getting to that? Like, what is Min style? Like, this is what Min's
Oh
own
man, I wish I knew. I think it's like I'm still in search.
idea.
It's really hard
Yeah.
because I like so many things,
Mhm.
I think um, sometimes I think like some artists who do one particular thing long enough, it becomes them. Like for example, if an artist just does dinosaurs his whole career, and it's like all of a sudden someone else tried to do similar dinosaur, and it's like, oh, you're copying that guy, you know. Um, I don't feel I'm at the point where I just want to do one particular thing and just like being limited by one thing. I wish I would discover like a style or something like that was like, oh, that's Min, but it's hard. It's a constant search, Yeah, and I hope I hope one day it's gonna be like, oh, that's Min, but yeah,
Lifelong
uh,
dream.
yeah, but it's a journey, and that's what I like about it, maybe,
Mm.
so that is like sometimes an unachievable goal,
Mm.
and
Yeah, but that's kind of what also keeps your drive a little bit, like just
yeah,
kind of.
because what do you do if you're already there?
Yeah.
You just sit down and relax and retire. It's like I have nothing to prove. No, it's not. It's not. I know that a lot of people are requesting Boolean tool, where you can like just cut out. You know what I mean, right? And for me personally, I think Boolean, yeah, Boolean, but uh, the way I work in Gravity Sketch is that you can always bring different objects into the scene that you pre-make or something like that. So you don't really need Boolean, and a lot of things you can replicate. But what I wish is that you guys had a little bit more variety to primitive tools. For example, like a cylinder, if I had an ability to not only have a cylinder but also cut a donut in the cylinder, or like adjust that, and then like, because everything is simple shapes, to be honest. Like I come from 2D background, and what we usually do is we break down, say, like a human face, right? It's just a box with another box, and then you just transform it a little bit, but it all starts from the primitive shape, right? It would be so amazing to sculpt the cloth. That's at least that's how I would use it. For example, in Gravity Sketch, usually I would just for this guy, right? I'll just do a simple sort of like try to do some sort of cloth illusion. But then I know that in Blender I can just tweak it a little bit with the cloth tool, so it doesn't really. But with crease tool, in the latest crease tool in Gravity Sketch, I can totally see having more control in VR, just like, if you really want to be like hands-on, like just like fully VR thing. Yeah, so
Definitely.
exciting. The way I texture things is just very simple. It's just like unified, and I separate things by color. So it just, so I know that, and also I know that later on there's going to be a separate material. And honestly, the 3D flow that the Gravity Sketch creates, it's pretty damn good already. I wish I could really find something to like bug you with something, but honestly, I have no complaints there, to be honest. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was
Yeah,
uh, this was awesome.
yeah, it's really cool to see your workflow and just yeah, it's awesome to see work in such a unique way. I know you've seen like a lot of industrial design and car design, and those are where like our big customers are.
Hmm?
But the concept art community has been huge supporters of ours, and we always try to listen to them and hear what their thoughts are on development. So it's great to see it firsthand as well from someone like yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. I
Thank you
wish
for
you
having me.
yeah, I wish you luck in finding your own IP, your unique IP, the Min style, but not too fast, right? So you can continue.
Yeah. Best of luck, you guys. Thank you
Thanks.
very much for such an awesome tool, and yeah, wish you all the best.
Thanks, man. Ciao. Have a good
Bye.
one. Yeah.
Thanks, Min.
Bye. Thanks.